Welcome to TG2M with KayeCee Austin, your #1 destination for personal and business relationship advice, tips, interviews, and more.
So JT Tran is also credited as the Asian Playboy. He's a dating coach as well as a dating advice columnist for LA Weekly, Baller Magazine. He's also the founder and CEO and lead instructor of ABC of Attraction, a company that offers pickup artist courses to men. He introduced the concept of the ABCDEF structure, which incorporates three main components, namely thoughts, actions, and words. The concept teaches men how to develop their attitudes, change the matter of their dress, and convey sexuality while courting and dating men. JT mainly teaches shy Asian men confidence and communication skills. JT and his company has been featured on ABC's Nightline with Juju Chang, Asian Week, Verge, Huffington Post, Al Jazeera America, Voice of America, News TV China, NU Asian Magazine, the Harvard Crimson, New York Magazine, E Magazine, the Yale Herald, Hyphen Magazine, and Daily Yale News. He's been featured as a guest speaker at Harvard University, Yale, University of Chicago, and Wharton School of Business, where he's passionate about teaching and coaching men his unique method of engineering that juxtaposes or combines the main skills that he acquired as an engineer to today's dating. That's amazing. So tell us about that. Welcome to the show, JT.
I know that's a mouthful. So basically, I would call it, America's #1 Asian dating coach. And you're right. How I arrived at where I am in life and the mission that I've undertaken, this essentially call to service, is a very unique path that I took because being an aerospace engineer is a far cry from what I do today. But at the same time, you can sort of see the trajectory in the fact that I, being a very stereotypical Asian American, spent my entire life being a very studious sort of, boy and concentrating on his studies, having a strict set of Asian parents, tiger mom, that pushes you to be academically successful. But socially, I went to prom by myself in high school. Like, I didn't kiss my first girl until the age of 20. So,
I read that.
yeah. So I spent so much time trying to be educated and professionally successful. Never spent the time developing my own personal core self and having the romantic success that I wanted in life until, one day this tall, blonde, pretty, blue-eyed girl chose me in college. And I was incredibly lucky because it's an engineering school in Florida Institute of Technology, which is like an hour from the Kennedy Space Center. And I wanted to be a rocket scientist and all that, be part of the space exploration. And, I accidentally used some philosophies of pickup, of sort of lighting up the room and kind of ignoring her by accident. But like, she thought I was ignoring her, but in reality, I was so scared shitless I couldn't talk to her. She thought I was too cool for school, but in reality, I was like, "Oh no, cute girl, must run!"
Right.
And then after I graduated college, I moved to LA, and for a while there, I kind of thought I was the big man on campus, having a pretty girlfriend, and really being the only Asian guy with a non-Asian girlfriend, right? And then I realized, like, wow, I tried all the types of dating, online dating, going to Mixer, speed dating, like eHarmony rejected my application, right?
No way.
Yeah. So this is back in the day when they actually had you fill out like one of those Myers-Briggs personality tests.
Okay, yes.
Now you just log in, whatever. But here they're more stringent, and basically when I get the results back, it said I was too cerebral. They could not find a partner, a mate for me. So apparently being smart wasn't going to help me get a girl. And so that's how I got into pickup, because pickup tend to emphasize a very practical application of psychology, And then when I got into that, I started writing about my misadventures in a blog called the Asian Playboy blog, which is sort of like Sex in the City but for Asian men.
Okay.
And
Tell
and
us about that.
yeah, and then people started following me. I started getting this following until one day this Chinese Canadian mother called me up and she wanted me to help out her son in high school who had been harassed by neo Nazis. And
Oh, wow.
I told her for like 3 days, like, man, for 3 days and 3 nights, I'm going to be the big brother he never had. Because I condensed all my learning experience into a system. I kind of applied my systems engineering background when it came to spacecraft, and I had like, okay, how can I teach what I learned over like the
Right.
last 2 years, but make it simple enough, but also flexible enough for this high school kid to learn. So I came up with essentially an acronym. That's all ABC, system is an acronym
Right.
like ABCDEF. Like anybody can learn it if they know the alphabet.
Right.
That's
It's that
how.
easy, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I got started. It's like I said, it's a call to service, really, because I had no intent
Yeah.
of doing this as a business.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I arrived here.
Oh no. Okay. You actually answered the next question. The next question was going to be, what was your catalyst moment? So your catalyst moment was when that mother asked you.
Yeah, it was such a
Your
huge responsibility. It made me like seriously like just think about when I was his age, what would I have need to know? And like I, living in the South, had experienced racism. Like I'm from Texas, so get called all types of like racist names. But
Right.
I'd never been like beat up by like Nazis. That's kind of just crazy, you know.
Wow. So what happened with him? I mean, you have to know.
Right. So like flash forward, years like I think like
ROI.
eight years later, we had stayed in contact for a while, then dropped off. But like 8 years later, he is in med school, moved in with his girlfriend, and basically, yeah, contemplating marriage at this point once he becomes a doctor.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a ROI on being your friend. That's all I was telling you. That's awesome. All right. So next question. One of the things that we always hear, well, in this space that I've been hearing, hear Asian men talk about that in this culture, in the Western culture, the Asian American man is like, that's the way women women see you guys. But I want to let you know that's not true for ethnic women. Just so you know.
Good to know. Yeah.
But talk to us about that, because I know that's one of the major things that, like I said, that's just not a good situation.
Well,
Or as a portrayal.
yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, we obviously have the old school kind of patriarchy that comes from the motherland that feeds into a certain negative
Yes.
stereotype about us, and I recognize that. But also, obviously, we have like Hollywood and the media that feeds into certain
Yes.
perceptions. Things like being effeminate or not aggressive,
Right.
not romantic, not take charge. I think
Right.
there's that one movie with Jet Li, that famous Chinese action star, goes here and
Right.
his first leading role, he doesn't even kiss the girl. Romeo
With
must die.
Aaliyah.
Yeah, he's just like a attractive black girl. But I think it was
Right.
like they tested it, they crowd tested it or something like that, and they didn't find like the kiss scene like really went well with the audience between an Asian guy and a black woman. So there's obviously a lot of things that go into the different perceptions, negative perceptions that people have of Asian. And I used to obsess about it as a young man, just thinking like it's a media's fault, it's Hollywood's fault. One thing I learned though is there's only one thing that we have control over in this universe, 100% control over it. That's what I do. That's it. I can't control society. I can't control the TV, the movies. I can only control me. So I've learned like yes, those stereotypes exist from being like effeminate, weak, not romantic, but most importantly is like how do I carry myself? You know, the idea of just breaking any kind of stereotypes or just perceptions that people may or may not have of me. I can't control TV. I can only control what I do.
Right. Well, but would you say that you're passionate about getting, you want to make sure that you're that face that they see? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if I don't see the positive change in society, then I can't wait for the next person to do it. I have to be that.
Exactly.
Right? You can't simply pass the buck. If I wanted to see that positive change, I need to be it.
I agree, 100%. One of my, let's see, I think you know that I'm an Army veteran, but in the military, like we always say we don't see color, we see green.
Right.
And there are Asian guys, in the military, and we never saw that whole, like in LA, you kind of just see Asian guys and they only date like white girls or whatever. But in the military world, like it's totally different. Everybody just dates whoever. So I want to talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I know when I read Asian male blogs, they're like, oh, I met this hot blonde and blah blah blah. Yeah. I want to just chat about that for a little bit, because if you could do us a favor, and I'm talking Hispanic chicks, I'm talking, and let them know, like, hey, there are guys that already set the page for you guys, set the way for you guys. So come to us. It's everybody makes this world around. So talk to us about that.
Sure. It's a fact of life that when it comes to dating, white is the standard by which everybody's compared to.
Right.
I'm compared to white males, and so and so
right.
for white females. So yeah, there is definitely a gravitational kind of pull towards dating that way. But what I also do is I do encourage my students to date Latinas and Black women. Actually, one of my most viral videos that I did was Asian men kissing Black women for the first time.
I saw that. Yes,
that went pretty viral. It was like something that really caught people's eyes. And just interesting thing about reading those comments, what I found were usually I would get like the women sharing it more, and then like the haters were usually white guys for whatever reason. I'm like, it's not even about you. Like, why are you throwing shade? So I definitely do encourage it. And during my live programs, I will tell my students, like, it is so much easier, if you will, for an Asian guy to go up to a Black girl, easier than he thinks. I remember one time, I had a student, he was like from China. He had been like studying in America, and I see this in the corner, like this attractive Black girl, and I say, hey, just introduce yourself to her. And he looks over there, and sort of like in that same general vicinity was a Black bouncer. Like you could tell they weren't together. It was like he worked for the bar as just Black girl. He's like, well, that Black guy. It's like, well, he works here. What are you worried about? Isn't he gonna beat me up if I try to talk to him about the Black girl? It's like, no, he's not gonna beat you up. Right. So I definitely have to break these perceptions, and it's a lot of it comes from, again, our old mother country kind of perceptions, where you might have like China, Japan, where they don't have a lot of people of African descent. So for them to go out there, it's a big push, right? Although what's interesting is, because China is investing so much into Africa, that you actually are getting a lot of Chinese African, marriages, because there are so many more Chinese men than there are women because of China's one-child policy. Did you know that?
Right. Yes.
So there's quite a bit of cross marriages slowly starting across the spectrum.
I did not know that piece. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, that's great. So I was going to ask you if you knew about how in New York, there's meetup groups that are forming now. Mm-hmm. Google it when you get a chance. There's tons of meetup groups. It's Asian men and Black women. I'm like, oh wow, a lot of them. So I love the fact that you want to be that face, because I'm always about that. If there's something missing, we need to just go ahead and put it out there and
Yeah, I mean,
see that change that we want to see.
absolutely, it's socially rewarding, personally rewarding, but also for those of us who are entrepreneurs, you know, if you can, you know, find that need, that niche,
Yes.
and like with Black women and Asian men, there is a certain similar effect that's going on, where
Yes.
it's sort of different, but you know, on the spectrum of sexuality, or sexuality is being warped by the media.
Yes.
So.
We were about to, like, we're right here. What's going on? Yes, that's exactly where I was going to go. A lot of the articles that I've been reading, it's crazy. Like the first 6 pages of Google, a lot of articles I've been reading, Asian men, they're talking about how they feel that there's a connection between, major connection between African American women and Asian men, because it is skewed. It's totally opposite. You know, African American women were made to look like we're masculine. We're, you know, emasculated. Yet all of our features and everything that we do, we're known as being caretakers, mothers, and entrepreneurs. Those are womanly attributes. Just like you guys are known as being effeminate, but you guys are known as being hard workers, family men. You know, those are masculine, Western masculine attributes.
Putting food on the table. Yeah, the kind of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all the articles now are saying, even Huffington Post, they're like, you guys should just date.
Yeah. I definitely encourage it. It is for a lot of Asian guys. It's a push, you know, because I will have students that, to them, they've always ever only dated Asian women, right?
Right.
And so, like, you gotta really kind of like push them out there. Because I tell them, like, these girls, they're not stopping guys from hitting on them. Like a white guy, a black guy, you know, will hit on them. Like I've known friends of mine who have Asian fetishes. Like I once told this Latina friend of mine, she would go to an Asian club with her Asian friends, but you know who the only guys who hit on her? White guys and black guys that were at the Asian club.
Right. Because Asian men are like, uh-oh.
Yeah, or they're, you know, they're only like used to dating Asian women. So we
Right.
definitely have, the idea is like making Asian men understand that other women find them attractive and are receptive. And I think that if they believe that, it'll be a little bit easier for them to try to initiate that first move.
Well, I went to an event. It was like 500 dudes, and I was the only female. I did it on purpose. Being approach. And one of the people that approached me was like a 6'7", 20-year-old Asian guy, you know,
Nice.
and he approached me, he had a cowboy hat and everything, you know. He's like, how old are you? I'm like, how old are you? You know, he's like, I'm 20, but I'm old enough for you, or something like that. And I'm just like, I like that. You know, confidence is all it takes.
Yeah.
All it takes. You know, Bruce Lee, like I'm just gonna always say, Bruce Lee has already set the pace for you guys. I have a super impression. But so you guys are good. So definitely tell your students that.
Yeah, I'm definitely pushing the message, you know, but it's for a lot of my students, it's a multi-pronged effect, because the way I approach it is I teach in a holistic manner, which and not in a hippie sense, right? But in the sense that I try to approach it in a very Renaissance man, kind of well-rounded sense, where I'm trying to slowly change their mental perception, but also teach them practical skills in like how they speak and how they physically move and carry themselves. But you also have to realize, like, when something like 2/3 of Asian Americans don't speak English as their first language, like even talking isn't really that important. It's like how you carry yourself and the actions that you take.
Yes. So let's talk about, so what exactly, you've already said some of this, what exactly, you know, walk us through what a student learned with ATC Reflection.
So our primary service is what I call the Premium Boot Camp, and that's a weekend live training course where we do it in a very professional manner. We have a class. We get, like, you know, the students get a pre-boot camp home study course, a workbook, and there's PowerPoint presentations, and as well as sort of like exercises and drills during class. And what I do is I try to teach, again, from a holistic Renaissance man kind of way, where I talk about how to change their societal conditioning, right? Any kind of potential internalized racism that they might have, or try to
Yes.
boost their self esteem. Because, like, mentally, the battle, as Sun Tzu said, the battle is lost or won before it's even fought, right?
Yeah.
So, we talk
Art of
about,
war.
yeah, we talk about that. We talk about physically their body language. How do they carry themselves? Because if they're coming off as nervous, or they're not making facial expressions, I call it the Asian poker face, right? Um,
Yes.
you know, all these subtle things physically that we don't think about as men. And then finally, like, what to say to her when you come up to her, and maybe how to try to have a little sense of humor when it comes to bantering and laughing, and basically carrying them the process all the way from, A, which stands for attitude, approach, and attract, all the way to, like, F, which I think we both can figure out that one.
Right. Okay. All right. Good. Towards the end, you'll be able to give out your information. So let's talk candidly about you, James. Creating a company such as this, you have to have either managerial or entrepreneurial skills. So, was there a point, at what age did you realize that you had those skills, or did it just smack your face?
Well, as an engineer, I didn't really have a lot of necessarily business skills, but I had, like, the critical thinking skills to figure things out. Um,
Okay. Managerial, I would say.
right.
So it's like
The ability to,
critical skill.
yeah, the ability to create a system, and then to realize that there was a product here, and then figuring out, like, how to market it, and set up events, and creating a business entity. It was very backwards engineering, to be honest. It was very
Yes,
reverse engineering. Like I
yes.
said, I don't have a business background, but at the same time, I was able to sort of figure it out on my own. Um,
Right.
it's still a little bit limiting, being like the primary mover, especially when you're like a coach, or a consultant realm.
Yes.
But what I've learned were, like, the limitations that I had, and that's where I started bringing in more specific people to help in areas that I couldn't do. I think that as an entrepreneur, you start to feel successful, especially, like, in my case, you have certain internet fame, and it's very
Yeah.
easy to grow a sense of hubris and pride. And so the act of asking for help, from someone to bring them in, um, just you just have to ground yourself and not have, like, a full sense of ego.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it really does take a team. I know a lot of times, a lot of people try to say, oh, yeah, I'm entrepreneur, this is my company, whatever, and everybody's posting, entrepreneur life, but it takes that team to make that.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Good stuff. Good, good. All right. So there really wasn't an age. Well, no, how old were you when you created ABCs of Potential?
Uh, so I graduated college. I did engineering for 4 or 5 years. Realized I didn't really like it. I think 26, I guess.
Okay.
I'd been in, like, the corporate engineering world for a while, and then you realize the government owns your soul. You're
Right.
making money for them, right?
Yes.
But I was in, like, the workforce for a while, and then I had that blog. It was only meant to ever be a hobby, and then it started, like, going from more than a hobby into actually something real. So, like, mid late 20s. That's when I started. I wouldn't say I was good by any measure. It just happened, like, clients were throwing money at me. I'm like, hey, money. then
Right.
then I
But that
became,
whole second career thing is not always easy,
yeah.
But if it comes from a place of passion,
Hmm.
it's gonna be easy,
Yeah. I mean,
Of
I
course, you
threw
bring in whatever you need to
yeah.
bring in.
I
The
threw
core of
myself
it
into
is
it. I threw myself into it, burned out a little, and then I had to reground myself, and then really consciously dedicate myself to make this a business, and not just a hobby. And I think that's something that people who are on that transition will probably face, where you have to make a faith, leap of faith. Like, I get quit my primary job and really do this, or this is going to remain a hobby.
And some people can't do it.
Yeah, it's scary. It is scary.
It is. And we glamorize entrepreneurship, but oof.
It's hustle. Like I always say, the only person that can fire me is me. If I don't hustle, then I'm going to screw myself out.
Yes. So let's talk about inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the show. We're coming up on part of the show. We call it Filling Your Way to the Top. But we're going to talk about who inspired you. Would you say to be who you are today, who in your immediate life? Not so much celebrities.
I guess on a certain, it sort of like came full circle for me. Growing up in Texas, we moved around a lot. My mom was like a single mom, and for the longest time, I was like really angry at her because I didn't understand like why we had to move. And that's also part of the reason why I never dated was I went to like 4 different high schools, right?
Right.
And it was just rough not having friends. And for the longest time, I was really angry at her. And it's only ironically after studying pickup and like the intervening sort of like space, being an adult, that I gained empathy. And that's one of the things that I tell my students is if you can think from another person's perspective, like, a woman's perspective, you'll always be better off, right?
Yes.
And I started understanding my mother, like how hard she worked, and coming to a new country, especially like from Vietnam and everything that happened there at the war, barely understanding maybe the language and the culture and the sacrifices that she had to make as a single mother. And she was very entrepreneurial. And the thing is, like, she failed a lot too. She did like a pizza store, like a pizza store, a convenience store, laundromat. Wow. So she did a couple things, and then she ended up settling on like car washes and laundromats, like a very cash-driven business, and that's like sort of her like her like passive income. But there was a lot of failures. There were a lot of failures. Like she had to, I think, declare bankruptcy and stuff like that, and it was tough, especially raising me and my little brother. But now, like I got it. Like after studying pickup, I was like, I am like literally like told her I had loved her for the very first time I could ever remember. And I understood. I understand like the sacrifices that she made, but also I appreciated the hustle. Like the actual hustle for like, like God forbid Donald Trump is now going to be our president, right? And, he decides to exile all like Asians, right? Whatever reason. And I have to move to some country that I don't even speak the language, right? Like, could I do that now, right? Like my mother did, and then start a new business, and then fail that business, and then keep trying until you actually hit something, right?
Right.
That's a lot of grit that you have to go through while raising like a couple of kids. So I definitely have a lot of respect now that I'm, I understand. Yeah, now that I understand where she comes from. She definitely inspired me.
That's good. So, is she your current support system? Is she one of your cheerleaders, so to speak?
Yes, I remember. She barely understands the internet. Like, she barely understands the internet. She only texted me for the very first time this year. First text, right? And I remember coming home for Christmas like many years back, and it was like I had been on TV on Nightline, and she didn't really understand what I did. So I just tried to tell her like consulting, teaching, that's up. Like she didn't really understand. And then she saw me on TV, and when I came home for Christmas, they said, "Hey, I saw you on TV." And then he's like, that's the thing about Asian parents. They, they want to be, have pride in their sons and daughters. And we tend to think as Asians, like, oh, we have to be doctors or successful lawyers. No, as an Asian parent, she just wants bragging rights to brag to her neighbor, like, haha, Your son's a
Yes,
doctor, a lawyer? Huh? My son has been on national television.
exactly. That trumps everything, right?
Exactly. So it's like, yes, mom, I was on TV.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, that's good. I'm so glad to hear that. I love, of course, we as women, we love to hear that guys have really great relationships with mom. So for her to be your
Yeah.
cheerleader in what it is that you're doing now, that's super amazing. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, especially like, I was an absolute rotten bastard in high school. I
ah,
was, like I said, I was just full of teenage anger because I didn't understand.
right,
I really didn't
right.
understand, because when you're a teenager and you're a boy and you're lonely, you can
Yes,
only think of like
yes,
yourself and your pain. But then when I was able to
yeah.
release that pain, and part of it was also obviously being able to date whomever I wanted. I finally like was able to let that go and start seeing from her perspective because I wasn't thinking about myself anymore.
Now, is she an active? When I hear you talk about her support, it reminds me of Hugh Hefner because he actually started his business. His mother was she started the business and then handed it over to him, and she's
Wow.
always been his biggest cheerleader until she passed away. So, does she get involved in the business at all, or is she just a cheerleader?
More cheerleader, like I said, she barely understands the internet, and we are
Oh,
primarily like an internet-based business. But
it
she's
is. You're
always like
right.
asking like how things are going. Um,
Okay,
you
but
know,
she's a
she,
cheerleader.
yeah, yeah,
That's good. You need that.
yeah.
So let's talk about mentorship. Definitely in this space, in this business, we all need mentors. So tell us, who are some of your mentors that are guiding you on this amazing journey?
Well, I mean, my evolution had like that pickup aspect. Um, and then when it came to more like the business, I there wasn't like a specific mentor mentee relationship so much as I would attend like kind of business and like marketing programs.
Okay,
Um,
yeah,
so it was, I guess you could say there were mentors, but obviously in a broader audience while I absorbed their wisdom and their knowledge. So I mean,
right.
like from the pickup, scene, there was like Mystery who kind of started that. Um,
Of course, yes.
right, right. And there was obviously a difficulty in the fact that this was a 6 foot tall white guy and I was a short Asian guy. So I had to explore on my own that aspect of like race when it came to dating. And that's basically how I got known. While when it came from like marketing and business,
Right.
it was definitely helpful if they've ever gone to Ryan Dice's Traffic and Conversion Summit. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's incredible. Like if your people or they have a service and they know it's a good service and that people will
Mhm.
buy, they just don't have the audience. Try going there, and they will teach you the specific strategies, like real practical strategies, to get eyeballs. And once you have the eyeballs, then you can start like trying to drive that traffic and convert it into clients. From a coaching perspective,
Mhm.
there's Malinchak, James Malinchak. He
Okay.
teaches, if you've heard of him, he teaches how to turn coaching and public speaking into a very practical business. So he is a great program where he'll give free seminars, and they're just solid, like real seminars full of
Yes.
information. And then like he'll have like these paid programs, and I've done that. Like I took a media boot camp with like Lisa Gibbons, from
Yes.
TV. She was like super helpful in how to have a more TV presence. So I'll do these self development courses from these business people that are successful because you do want to like obviously mold yourself from people that have gone through the same thing that you're going through.
Yes. The one thing I realized though, it's actually considered mentorship still.
Yeah.
It's still considered mentorship. And if they ask you, like, I know in the pickup world, they'll say, hey, if anybody asks who your mentor is, it's me. So even if they're in a room with 500, you're in a room with 500. So yeah, you're mentored by those.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely recommend
Awesome.
them. I think they're all great. It's definitely
Yes.
very practical. If your people are ready with a product or a service, like those, they'll teach you the nuts and bolts of making money.
Hey. That's what we want to know, right?
Mhm.
And it makes it fun, because I mean, money's energy. So,
Yeah, I mean
all
that's what
right,
the money is for, is to give you the freedom, right? To, especially
yes,
if your people are on the cusp of going full time entrepreneur instead of like part time hobby. Like
yes,
it's scary, and obviously it helps when you have solid knowledge from an entrepreneur who's done it and made his millions. So
and they're done that. Yes. So let's talk about failure. So a lot of people are afraid of failure,
mhm,
but we need that to grow. You
absolutely.
know. So tell us about some of your failures and how you got over them spiritually, emotionally. Well,
Well,
failures are setbacks.
in pickup, gosh, I have more failures than anything, and that's the part of pickup. I mean, it's a personal journey that requires
Yes.
failure. That is an interesting aspect. Pickup is
Yes,
a
you're
personal
right.
journey that requires failure to succeed. I should actually write that down.
Yes, you should. Well, I will remind you. I'll text you.
Yeah. Like I remember one time I had been like maybe 6 months into my journey, and so I got to the point where going from completely terrified to talking to girls, where I became excited to talk to girls. Right. So I had to go through that journey, and I was going to hang out with some friends to go to like the steakhouse that turns into like a bar club later in the night. And I was going to be like, I'm going to show off my newfound lady skills, right? And off in the distance, we finished dinner, and off in the distance, I see like five girls, right? Four are Asian, and then there's one girl. She's facing away from me, but she has blonde hair. Like,
Right.
obviously from her body, you can tell she's an attractive blonde. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start with this. White girl with Asian girlfriends, probably likes Asian guys. That seems to be a
Right.
logical, deduction there. So I go over there, and as I am about to say, "Hey, ladies," the Asian girls turn to me, and the blonde turns to me, and she is this blonde, platinum blonde, very attractive, blue-eyed Asian girl, and she says,
Oh, yes.
she says, "Stop! We don't talk to Asian guys. Go away, go away."
Yeah,
I'm like,
I've heard of
wow,
that.
that's kind of rough, right?
Yeah.
Having like your own race of people denying you because you're
Yes.
Asian. So
Yes.
okay, I was like, okay, woosha, just kind of calm down for a second, have a beer, um, and so just kind of calm down. Not gonna let that affect me. It sucks, but
Right.
rejection happens. And so
Right.
then I started a conversation with this very cute Latina, and things are going good. We start holding hands, kind of getting that little warm fuzzies when flirting is going right. And I'm like, I'm gonna
Right.
introduce you to my friends. So we go to where my friends are sitting, and I introduce her to my friends. And then this one guy who wasn't my friend per se, he was like friends of my neighbor. I mean, he was the boyfriend of one of my neighbors, and he's a little bit drunk. And as I'm introducing the Latina, he comes up to me and like grabs me by the shoulder, and he's like, "What are you doing with this Asian guy? You know, Asian guys have smallest dicks in the world, right? Small dicks." And he did that
Hater.
in front of the girl. He did that in front of all my friends and all my neighbors.
Wow.
And at that point,
Top
you're like,
blocking. Top
yeah, but it's
bastard.
like in a racist manner too.
Wow.
And it's kind of like because he's part of like your circles, part of my circle was sort of
Right.
like a stab in the back. And at that point, like getting it twice in the same night in my face was a bit more than I could handle, and I went home and I cried. That was like, it was just devastating. It's just like, okay, one I could handle, right, but like
Right.
two, like in a row, that was just rough. Um, and then I cried, and it's part of what led me to realize that both the PUA community and the Asian community sort of felt Asian men, because the pickup community doesn't really address racism, right? Because it's mostly full of like
Exactly.
angry white guys, right? Well,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and Asian American community is always like, it's the media's fault, it's Hollywood's fault. You can blame whomever you want, but it doesn't help. In the here and now, it doesn't help to blame, right?
Yes.
So that's like that deep rejection where you're like literally in bed, kind of crying and just deliberating and questioning your own self worth, not even as a man, but as a human being. where like your own people don't think you're a man enough, and your friends don't think you're a man enough. It sucks, but like, like the next day I got up and I tried again, just kind of like, just suck it up. I think the hallmark of a man is not how many times he succeeds, but how many times he get up after he falls. So.
Mm-hmm. You're like right here, because the next question is, what would you say to any preteen and teen, or young adult that's going through now what you went through? And that, you can say more, but that for sure, you got to say that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the curious thing is, we do teach teenagers. Like I said, that my first student was a teenager, and not too long ago, a father who was so impressed by the program he took with me sent his 2 teenage boys who were like 15 and 17. So we did a high school program for them. And what I would say is, I think be thankful that they're learning it now instead of like years later when I wish I knew, because they're gonna have this as a permanent part of who they are. It is like, having a savings account, that idea of interest. By putting in now that deposit, like 10 years, they'll just keep growing and growing. But like I said previously, pickup or just dating in general is to improve is based off of failure. Just to get your heart broken when you have a girlfriend, right? Or to approach a girl and get rejected. That is really the only way to improve, and you have to accept that as part of your development growth. No matter how much it hurts, no matter how much like your first love, your first puppy love or crush, it's part of our growth is the pain.
That's true. Very true. Well said. I mean, what was I going to say? I think it's super important. I started TG2M because you can be great at business, but it's how you treat people. That's one of my first mentors told me. It's how you treat people that they remember. And this whole entrepreneurship game is about relationships.
Sure.
At the end of the day, it's about relationships. When you go network, you have to know how to talk to people. They don't teach that in high school. My first company is a team-driven company. And they're constantly telling us, we're not learning this, Miss KayeCee, we're not good, so we need to teach them that. That's why relationships, that's why, like you said, there's so many angry young men out there, because they don't know what to say to women, and nobody taught them. It's all about girl power. What about young men power?
Right.
But I love talking to people like you,
Thank you. Yeah. Well, like you say, like I'm actually thankful for feminism from a practical point of view, right? In my own self-interest, because it's what's given me a career in a company. Because dating has changed, and we as men have to catch up to that. Like, it exists more than just here in America, but even in China, where there's something on the order of 30 million more Chinese men than there are women. Like, they're suffering from that gender imbalance, and they're trying to figure it out too, right? So they can't depend on old traditions of dating. It's time to go to dating 2.0, right?
Yes. So dating 2.0 is basically ABCs of attraction.
Exactly. Right? 3.0. We've evolved.
Yes, go ahead. I'll plug it in for you when you won't. I'll plug it in for you. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'll ask you a bonus question. So let's talk about sleep. That's a really big thing. How much sleep?
See, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask this, because I obviously live a different lifestyle than most normal entrepreneurs. Like, my work hours are stripper hours, right? I work at night. And my job is to be essentially a professional partier, if I can phrase it that way. So I don't know if I'm really the best kind of role model in that regards, because I'll be up until like 3, 4, whatever a.m. and I'll sleep until like past noon, and then like my day starts at like 1 o'clock or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the question was how much sleep you get, you know. But we'll put a disclaimer. We'll put a disclaimer that we know that you should get how much? 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
But minimum of 4 is actually good.
Yeah.
High performers actually do 4.
Mm-hmm.
And napping during the day is good too. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
I do that too. I got that covered.
It's good for your brain. It is. All right. So now for the bonus question. So if you were in a world where entrepreneurship was banned, would you take up a trade, or would you rebel and become an entrepreneur anyway? And why?
All right. Could you repeat that last part? So if I lived in a world where entrepreneurship was banned, and then
would you take up a trade? Like, would you be a carpenter, or would you, you know, whatever they said that you should be, or would you rebel and start this whole, you know, the revolution type?
That's an interesting question. I mean, obviously it depends on the consequences, you know.
Okay.
Like if they're gonna string you up and execute you, then maybe I would just go back to engineering. Like, I guess again, I might be different in that regards because I do have like another career to fall back on as an aerospace engineer. Because I was making 6 figures straight out of college, so you know I have a very I did that in real life for a while.
Yeah. Okay, so your answer is that you would.
It all depends on the consequences. You know, if it's just like slap on the wrist, yes, I would do it. But if it's like if it's like some sort of Hunger Games, like
consequences, it's a beheading, JT.
Yeah, then I'll go back to being an engineer and make 6 figures. I mean, I'll work in space. I could. That was pretty cool too, even though it's like corporate government stuff.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. No, that's my favorite question.
We're just being real here. If it's a beheading.
Now, I will tell you though, for some reason, I think you might change it though, because I do a lot of live panels where it's like 4 or 5 people and in front of an audience. For some reason, everybody's like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur anyway.
I'm just being real. I mean, come on.
I like your honesty. You're like, you know what? I've got something to fall back on.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to cut my head off. I think it's peer pressure when you have these eyes looking at you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You better say entrepreneurship.
But also, you have to think about it like if you know, Trump instates a beheading for starting your own business, I think society will have bigger problems.
Right. Oh my gosh. It has certainly been a pleasure, JT.
KayeCee,
really
thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. I want to extend and invite you to be one of our influencers on our platform.
Okay.
It's an amazing platform. It should be ready within the next week and a half. We're going to have influencers that just want to be in. So definitely want to have you.
Sure, absolutely. Just send me the details. I'd be love to.
Yay, love it. Okay, well, happy holidays. And is there anything else that you want to tell our audience?
You know, as I tell my Asian students, be successful because you're Asian and not in spite of it. And if they need further information about what I do in our program, just go to www.abcsofattraction.com and check us out. Proof is in the pudding. We have reviews from people from all walks of life. I've had parents send their kids. I've had people who are divorced, you know, tall, good looking to short and looking like me, you know, able to get girls.
It's very handsome.
Thank you.
Okay.
But yeah, just come on and check it out.
So what are your social media handles?
They can just go to ABCs of Attraction. That's our primary corporate brand. So if they want to check that out, but actually our YouTube channel, we've developed a lot. There's a lot of free information, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of viral fun stuff, as well as like my college lectures at Harvard, Yale, Wharton, as well as more specific educational things about like fashion, you know, getting numbers, dating. It has quite a bit potpourri of videos, you know, whether you want some lighthearted fare to like really serious material. So check us out on YouTube, ABCs of Attraction.
And we'll definitely put your links and everything like that on our site.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, have a great evening, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Happy holidays.
Okay. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.